Welcome to the Connection Podcast. I am Lauren Dry, also known as the Connection Catalyst. Connection and this podcast for me is personal. As a driven professional, I found myself an expert in all things work and business, but it was at home that I really needed clarity and ease. After finally finding it one marriage breakdown and one marriage reset later, and finally discovering what really works to have connection in modern relationships, using science, simplicity and soul, our signature program, Rise into Regulation, was born. That's giving so many others in modern, driven relationships back clarity and ease for good. On the podcast today, we're going to dive deep together on all things relationships, business, identity, and leadership. And clarity and ease is at the heart of it all. And we are so happy to be with you so that you can have what you need in connection, mind, body, and soul too. When our kids fight with each other, and with us too, I tell you right now, something happens inside a parent where you really want to solve the problem for your kids, but my goodness, the way that we beat ourselves up. Everything from why do I let them speak to each other that way to, oh my gosh, they're going to end up in jail on the streets because they can't control their temper, to why can't they just get along? I'm exhausted. I don't want to have to deal with this. It is really brutal to navigate, not only for our nervous system, but for the whole family, because we know what our kids are capable of. We can see their hearts and souls, and we know that they're good kids. So when the worst comes out in them, sometimes it really can bring out the worst in us as well. Today, we are going to talk about navigating conflict between your kids. And this is really front and center right now. I just supported this with a client who sent me a beautiful snippet of a conversation that she'd seen online with Dr. Shefali. Now, Dr. Shefali is considered the mother of conscious parenting. She also works very closely with one of the mentors inside of Rise, whose name is Donna. I have a podcast episode with Donna that you definitely should go check out. The podcast episode with Donna is in one of our earlier episodes, so just search for Donna in the podcast and you'll find it. It is wonderful. We're both going to go see Dr. Shefali in Sydney next month, so yay, cannot wait. Dr. Shefali was on Oprah recently as well. Great episode to go and watch as to why conscious parenting is so valuable. Now, when it comes to managing conflict between siblings, there may be a pattern where one child is always the one who's wronged and one child does the bullying or is very intense and loud. That's the example that I recently worked with a client on. And I want to start off, first of all, by saying, yes, we're going to cover some tools to be able to help you navigate sibling conflict. And the tools are going to be a blend of what to do before the conflict, but also during and after the conflict. This is so important because retention of information happens when we are in a regulated state. That's when we can start to absorb it and start to create new patterns. When we are in a dysregulated state, or if we're triggered, then it's really difficult to learn something new. We're going to give you both tools, but just going to set you up by first of all saying, minimum 70 to 80% of the work we're going to do outside of the conflict with the kids. And it's going to set you up with a brand new foundation so that your kids can be friends with each other and you can be friends with them too. Now, I want to start off first of all by giving you a little bit more of a new understanding of the word discipline. We might have talked about this in earlier episodes, but I think this is going to be so valuable for you to anchor into again today. When we think of discipline, we think of punishment or consequences or stern responses to an action that was wrong. When in fact, the word discipline comes from the word disciple or discipleship. And when you look at the word from that angle, suddenly we realize that discipline was always meant to be something that happened in relationship with a mentor. In order to be a disciple, you must have a teacher, you must have a guide, you must have a mentor. Not a jailer, not a police chief, a mentor, a guide. Now, what this looks like when you apply it to discipline means that if our student is going off track, what that means as their mentor is we get to check in with ourselves, find out, are we regulated? Do we have the tools that we need to be able to show up in a way that allows us to be mentors that allow our disciples to grow up and grow in our image and grow in our model of what it means to be human. The single most effective form of education is not guidance, it is modeling. What that means is, imagine you were trying to teach your child how to fish. I want you to picture going home today, walking into the room and handing them a book on fishing. What do you think the chances are of them taking that book, going and buying some fishing rods, taking themselves to the local river or beach and just suddenly enjoying fishing? It's probably not going to happen. Well, maybe for some kids it might. What about if you buy them the rods, buy them the tools, buy them all the equipment, take them down to the latest dock, plop them on the dock, stand behind their shoulder and say, now you pick up that hook. Now you pick up this piece of bait. Now you hook it on. Yep, put it in the river. Yep. And you stand behind their shoulder. Probably more effective, right? Now I'm going to paint you a bit of a different picture. I want you to imagine that you've asked if you could hang out with them for the day. And it's sunset. You're driving in the car with them. You're driving towards the dock. You get out of the car and you pull out your fishing rods and your tackle, and all the while you're talking to them about how your day was and what your own experiences have been and why you really like to fish. And as they're walking with you down the dock, you simply sit down and you pat the chair next to them. You say, there's a spot here if you like. And you simply hand them a fishing rod when they're ready, and you slowly, without really saying much, you pick up a hook and you watch them, and then you hook the hook on the fishing line. You pick out the right bait, and all the while you gently encourage them, gently correct them, but you show them step by step through what you're doing and through connection how to fish. How effective do you think that might be? How quickly do you think that your child might learn to fish that way? I think that we all know the answer. And it's not simply because we're being gentle or soft or doing it for them. It's because our brains are wired to copy. Monkey see, monkey do. And so what conscious parenting involves is very much figuring out how to do it ourselves first, how to regulate first, how to manage our tempers or really show up when things are hard and complicated so that we can model that to our children. What that looks like with sibling fighting is starting off with a really strong foundation. So we're going to walk through the foundation that's going to help you with sibling fights, and then we're going to move into what to do in the moment. The foundation that you're going to start with actually involves something similar to the Connected Boundaries Bible episode that we've spoken about a few times. So please feel free to skip back to that one and have a look when you finish this episode. But it's much simpler. So what we're going to do with our kids is invite them from a place of connection to sit at the table with us, maybe have a cup of hot chocolate, make it something that feels good, take out a pen and paper and say to them, hey, I'd really like to set out some family values together. I think maybe we've gone off track a little bit and I want to understand and get your buy-in. You'd be surprised how younger kids can benefit from something like this, of just asking their perspectives. I want to get your contribution. I want to get your buy-in. I value your perspective. We're going to build as a family what our values are at level 1, 2, and 3. So communication, lifestyle, and core. It only has to be 2 each at each level. But really having an agreement with everyone around what those values are means that later on when things get tricky, you get to help remind or reflect or hold your own self accountable so that you can model what's important in the family. So in our family, some of our highest communication values are kindness, compassion, empathy. We watch our tone. We don't swear at each other. And these are all things that the kids have a buy-in on, that they like, that they value. Again, for lifestyle, we don't have to go into what parenting values or school values they like. You can simply say in any lifestyle decisions, what are our values? Sometimes this can even be a little bit overwhelming for the kids. So even just saying as a family, these are the 5 or 6 values that we cherish and we hold our own selves accountable to the most can really help the family come together. So, for example, in our family, play is important, quality time is important, kindness is important, authenticity is important, bravery is important, compassion is important. These are all values that as a family, that whether it's how we talk or the decisions that we make, we come back to again and again and again when things feel hard. The most important step when we build out our family values, though, is to make sure we hold our own selves accountable. Now, this is really, really tricky because we want to say to our kids, you need to be kind, you need to be patient, you need to be caring and empathetic. But sometimes when it comes to discipline, we can be very authoritative. And there are times where it is really important that we hold a boundary very quickly. And the majority of the time, simply holding communication boundaries of, okay, it's this person's turn to talk or it's this person's turn to talk, can really be done in a way that is a reflection of those values of kindness, of empathy, of care. And when we hold our own selves accountable, it means that our tone is not sabotaging all the work that we're trying to do to get our children to model the same values themselves. Doing the work ourselves first is an essential piece of the puzzle to make sure that our kids can see what it looks like for them. And that means when you've had a bad day, walking in, doing your somatics and checking in to see, am I angry that there's stuff all over the floor, or am I hungry because I haven't eaten since 9 a.m.? Am I really disappointed that you two are treating each other badly? Or do I feel sad? Do I feel ashamed that maybe I'm not getting this right and I'm scared that I'm going to let you guys down? And when I don't take care of that, that comes out as rage. It's really important that we are able to discern our own feelings so that we can model that for our kids. And I challenge you to check in and find out, when was the last time you sat down and shared a piece of apple with your kids and said, hey, do you know what? I had a really tricky day today. I had this happened with a coworker or a staff member. This is what's happening with a friend of mine, without going into detail and asking them to solve it for you, of course, but just modeling to them what it looks like to process. And I thought I was really, really angry at this person. But then when I sat with it, I realized I was quite sad. So I did some breathing and I calmed down, and then I came up with this solution and I was really proud of myself. Hey, what happened in your day? When we model what it looks like to have self-compassion, growth, empathy, and how to step away from shame, then our kids are going to have a framework of what that looks like as well. Another really great tool to use when you are trying to get the kids to pause so you can listen to one kid at a time is asking them, do you trust me to let you have a turn? Okay, I say this to my kids regularly. So if one is trying to interrupt the other one, I say to the person interrupting, hey, do you trust me to listen to you, to come back to you? This is going to be a big question. Some of us, a lot of us, are going to be put in the tricky situation where our children will say, no, I don't trust you to listen to me. And that's what happened with a client of mine this morning. Her response was, I think that that's exactly what my child is going to say. And my response to her was, good. I'm so glad that your child feels safe enough to say that to you. What this means is it's a beautiful opportunity for you to say, hey, thanks for telling me. We're going to work on that. We're going to work on rebuilding that trust so that you can take space when I'm talking to your sister, and your sister is going to be able to take space when I'm talking to you. This is an opportunity. I have a lot of care and compassion for kids with a strong fight response. That was me. That was the type of kid I grew up as. And what I say to parents of strong-willed kids is good. It means they haven't given up on you. They're still fighting to have that authentic and deep and secure connection. So take the time to figure out and trust what's happening underneath the surface, that there is purpose, even if it's coming out in a really terrible way. Particularly for teenagers who are dealing with a huge level of complexity at school and are surrounded by completely emotionally immature adults, and they're modeling their behavior and their survival instincts on how to adapt in those situations. So we are going to have to just step in and make sure as often as we can we're modeling to them a different way to process and navigate conflict. Next, when it comes to being in the moment, we've already covered how you can say, do you trust me to help you work this out? I promise you'll both get a turn. In addition to holding our own selves accountable and saying, are we bringing a lot of prejudice to these conflicts? Are we allowing the highest versions of our kids to step into conflict? Or are we, at every turn, really assuming that we know what's going on? So when it comes to what to do in the moment, we've already covered how to ask your child to take turns. We've already covered how to ask your child for trust when you navigate the conflict, but also make sure that you are leaning in and holding your own self accountable to make sure that you are creating space for both children objectively and not allowing the history of perhaps their patterns to come in and create future patterns based on that. Each time, do your best to start each conflict fresh. And so in the moment, after you've set these foundations, what is going to be really beautiful is to make sure that you are referencing the values that you've created. And what that can mean is if there is yelling, if there is swearing, if there is behavior that is unacceptable in your family values, you have something to refer back to, which means you've created agreements around, so for example, swearing. We don't swear at each other is a beautiful phrase that you can use in conflict versus no, don't talk to your sister that way. What this means is when you say we don't do that, you're creating a team culture environment where everyone is included and no one is singled out as being bad or wrong. Not saying for a second that the behavior itself is not bad or wrong, but we get to say you are still included and we as a family all hold our own selves accountable. We don't talk to each other like that. The third thing that you're going to be able to do in the middle of conflict is just take a pause. Practice doing this with yourself so that you're able to model this for your kids and give them the opportunity, often when there's high conflict, to say, right, one of you can go to this room, one of you can go to this room. We're all going to calm down for a second, and then we are going to work it out together. That way, when you do have them sitting next to each other and you're trying to say, do you trust me to work it out? Do you trust me to work it out? Then they're going to have the emotional space to be able to hear you and to hear each other. The fourth step that you're going to use is to try and crunch down into the feelings and needs. After the emotional intensity has gone down, try to simplify asking your children, what do you feel and what do you need? And when you ask one sibling how they feel, no, they can't say, I feel really angry because this other person did X, Y, Z and they're an awful person, go shit them off. They do need to be able to practice saying, I feel sad, I feel hurt. And it's going to feel vulnerable and scary at first, particularly if they don't have a reference for those feelings being held with compassion. But try to work in and ask them, how do you feel and what do you need? We're aiming for, I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel hurt. And I need care, kindness to be listened to. And when we can crunch down for each child what those feelings are, then what we do is we ask the child who has been injured, let's say, or insulted or embarrassed, the one who hasn't made the original mistake, then we model to that child what conflict resolution looks like. So put the child who made the mistake on the back burner. They're not going anywhere. You'll be able to navigate that. But in front of or in a space when you are ready and when you've practiced this enough, where the other child is able to witness what conflict resolution could look like, say to the other child from a place of deep regulation, not overcompensation, hold their hand and simply say, hey, thank you for sharing that with me. What can I do to help? And again, the response from that child might be send the other child off to boarding school. And you're welcome to have a little giggle and say, I understand why that feels that way, but then ask them and challenge them, what can you do to help? And they might simply say, hey, can you please go talk to them? As in, can you go talk to my sibling? And you get to say, yes, please trust me that I'm working on supporting your sibling to grow up into being someone who is proud of their behaviour, and I will talk to them and make sure that this is resolved. But for right now, what can I do to help? And they might just say, I need a hug. Or if something was damaged, you know, that you'll go and replace it for them. It's that feeling that problems can be resolved, that conflict doesn't have to be the end of a relationship. That's what we are modelling to them. And that's also what we're modelling to the sibling that made the mistake as well. After each child has down-regulated, then they're going to be able to have the nervous system capacity to either apologise or even ask what their sibling needs. That's going to be a great place to start. And we're obviously compacting a lot into one episode, but that's a really great place to begin practicing nervous system regulation. And then as you each get better and better at this, then another great tool to add into the mix is, as a parent, asking our children for forgiveness. This is going to be really tricky in big intensity moments, but start small. I like to ask my child if I've lost my temper at some point or been snappy because I've been hungry or tired is, hey, I am sorry for snapping at you earlier. Is there anything I can do to help? And trusting that anything that they tell me in return is only going to help the relationship without taking away true discipline, discipleship. And I do like to say, hey, do you forgive me? Or I hope you forgive me. Because again, it is a huge weight and relief that can be lifted off our children's shoulders when we teach them how to forgive, how to move forward, how to let go of resentment. This takes practice, okay? And we don't want to force our children to say this. But when it becomes something that's organic, that's added into a conversation, oh, what a relief when we're navigating conflict. Again, this topic does come with a lot of complexity. So if it has brought up any questions or big activations or challenges for you, please come and hang out in the DMs. You know where to find me over on Instagram at Lauren_Drive. Make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast to learn more and follow along for how to break our hidden patterns, the ones that we don't want to pass down to our kids and the ones that we want to break free of ourselves in any relationships, especially in our intimate relationships. And if you'd like to learn more about our RISE program and all of our mentors, you can head to the link in the show notes to learn more about our signature program, Rise into Regulation. I am so happy to be with you here and cannot wait to be alongside you on the journey in all of our podcasts and the resources that we share. And I'll see you in the next episode.